If only we could sign.
I know,
can't sign.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
I did put the ASL app on my phone, so I was like, I'm going to go in here and watch the free videos and learn words every day, and I've done it twice.
I mean,
you know how it
that's
is.
like 200% more than the rest of us have done, so I'll take it. That was good.
How was your fun?
Oh, it was really good. I wish I had drunk 12% less on Saturday, because I missed Sunday. Oh,
yeah.
dang. I wanted to rally, but I was infected.
Okay, check. Okay, that's bouncing. Let's see what the chat says in 15 seconds.
Chat!
Oh, easy.
Sorry. Forgot your headphones are
We
good.
can hear Abria, but nothing else now.
Yeah, that's a porn of mine. That's perfect.
Oh, yeah. Can you pull that door shut?
Oh.
After you take your wires off. Okay, they can hear us.
Yay.
I think we should probably redo that.
We'll redo that. We're going to try to look cool.
Yeah.
And then we'll edit it so that we are cool later.
Yeah, it'll totally be edited.
We'll fix it in
It'll
post.
Be the first one ever.
That's enough.
That's edited.
It's closed enough.
It wasn't.
Edit.
Okay.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
First try.
Okay.
We are ready.
Nailed it.
All right, let's do this. The land you live in has been at war for as long as any of you have been alive.
The Queen has decided to set off on a long and perilous journey to forge an alliance with a distant power.
She has chosen you and only you to serve as her retinue and accompany her on this journey.
She chose you because she knows you love her.
Welcome to Small Game Hunters. Today we will be talking about For the Queen. This is a game by Alex Roberts. She is the same one who brought you Starcrossed. I am wearing the shirt as we speak. And it will be produced and kind of distributed by Evil Hat Productions.
Nice.
It's not quite out yet, but so close. So close.
Come on, it's so patchy.
And we're going to talk about this game, which I have voted as my favorite game of 2018.
Yes.
But yeah, so maybe we can start a little bit with what this thing is and kind of how it looks.
Totally.
But yeah, I'll hand it over.
Okay. So this is a story game. It's deck based. So there's about 60 cards in the deck, and you should play it. So there's actually a lot of different modes that you can play this in, but recommended it's more of a party game. So like 3 to 6 players is key, but there are definitely variations where you can play it with two people. Like 1 if you're very lonely. I don't know. Just read the deck to yourself and imagine things. You could do that.
Sure.
Yeah. So it plays for about it's 30 minutes or longer depending on your group's pacing, but it can be played fairly quickly if you want to get in and out and do a bunch of party games throughout a session. And all you're really doing is taking turns answering these very simple questions that are focused mostly on the relationship, your relationship with the Queen and the journey, the land, the war. So setting context, and yeah, it's really cool. There's extra stuff that you can add. There's Queen art that helps inform the kind of style of world and Queen that you're playing with, and you can bring your own. You can kind of let the group's imagination run. So it's highly modular.
Yeah, well, you just brought up part of the components. So there are, I was going to say, because the art is gorgeous.
We have a deck right here.
I'm going to steal this deck.
So there's a deck. They're kind of tarot-sized cards. And I think there's 60-ish cards in the...
Yeah, I think the prompt cards, there's probably 40 something, 45
It's
or something
total
like
of
that,
60,
of
but
question
these
cards.
are, and I think our top is here, right? So all sorts of different art, and I don't know how many artists were employed, but
None of that's on the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. We can hold them in front of the camera. That's right, because we don't have.
Here you go.
But obviously they used a color palette that's kind of,
rich
palette that, jewel tones and rich and blues and scarlets and that they chose for the game, but they have different artists illustrating the cards. So just evocative of different types of worlds or games or queens. So you don't have to use these cards to represent your queen. You can everybody can kind of, and I know this is sort of something you like to do, Tomes, is sort of have us envision the queen our own way, because
Yeah.
we all have maybe slightly different
Theater of the mind.
Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about this later, but the
And
game
that's
and the
originally
queen evolved.
how the game was, right? Like the game was
Yeah.
just like a bunch of questions on an index card,
Yeah.
right? So there wasn't any queen cards, but definitely if you're playing with new people or people unfamiliar with story games in general,
Yep.
right? Like these would be great, right?
Right.
Because they
Yeah.
can kind of choose something. They've got something evocative. Maybe it helps them
Yes.
spawn like.
I will
Yeah.
say, the thing I actually really like, the game we played, we didn't use the queen cards, but I super appreciate the inclusion of like a bunch of different variants of queens. Because it's
Yes.
very easy whenever you play something, like the moment you go, it's a TTRPG, you're like, we're playing medieval Western
Yeah,
Europe.
everyone looks like Henry VIII. Or
Yeah, exactly.
Elizabeth.
And I don't need
Yeah.
This queen.
Yeah.
I don't want to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check out.
But like, give me a
Yeah.
cool fucking sci-fi queen that's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, a
Yeah.
virus in a computer. Like,
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
be anything, and sometimes,
Yeah.
you just need that little bit of push to go, hey, it could be a lot of different things. So like, unstick your brain
Yeah.
from this very traditional idea of what a queen could
Absolutely.
be.
Yeah, I'm super glad that those cards are in there. I won't ever want to play with them, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be in there, right? Like I want the possibility of the queen being a time traveling robotic
Yeah.
xenomorph,
Yeah.
and
Or like a bee.
or a bee.
Yeah.
Yes.
We should play as bees.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
it happened.
we will talk.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
I'm
god.
Yeah.
I am 100% happy to play that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to be this one when I grow up.
Right?
I'm a bad guy. Sorry, continue.
We get a little bit excited about this game.
I'm
For
very
reasons.
excitable.
Yeah.
For the bee. No, I wanted Jason to go ahead and.
No,
Re-
that's
okay.
what I had to say.
I'm just gonna. I'm gonna finish talking about these red components for this game because they're beautiful and the printing is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So it also comes with it's like 4 different sort of components. Game comes with its own X card.
What's an X card, Gina?
Well, X card in the traditional sense, but also it's part.
What's
which
the
is-
traditional sense, Gina?
The traditional sense is I don't want to go there. I don't have to tell you why. I don't have to, explain myself. There's no drama, no
Yeah.
drama llama. I just hit that X card and we are going to stop what we're doing
Yeah.
and reboot. We're
It's a
gonna
nice
do
safety
something
valve
else.
for games
It
where
is.
And for those of you who don't know what that is and you want more information, that
Yes.
you can just go online and search for like X Card RPG. You
And
will
fucking
immediately-
John, right?
Yeah.
Stravopoulos.
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 you definitely
You have
made
an
that name up.
amazing name. Yeah.
That's a
And
made
I
up
just
name.
butchered
Good
it,
old
and I'm
John.
so sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there's a lines and veils thing that can happen as it can with every game. But this game also has a mechanic X card, which is that. So if we introduce another component, I'm going a little bit backwards, but this we've talked about already. The majority of the game has these 40-ish cards you were saying that are kind of story prompts. So there are questions or details that you're going to be telling about the queen or about your relationship with the queen.
Why don't we talk to them about like that order of play? Like you
Yes.
you just bought these cards, right?
Yeah.
They're in front of you. You have this deck, and one of the nice things about it in this draft is there is a card
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
actually shows you,
Right.
Yeah.
here's how you set it up. Separate these decks,
Yep.
into little piles, and then start reading the instruction
Yeah.
cards. So why don't we go through that process?
Exactly, because I
Right.
was going to say I kind of almost went backwards.
Yeah.
So the first one is like you can set up and see what the different decks are. So you've got a scarlet deck, a green deck, the purple X card, and the blue queen cards.
Yes.
So the first, I believe, is the green deck. And the green deck is basically, and they go in order, and they are numbered. Do you want to show?
Sure.
It's basically the rules to the game. So super badass. Basically, and I believe the game asks you to do this, but you go around the table and everybody gets to read a mechanic or a rule of the game.
Yeah.
So that's how quick and fast it goes.
And it teaches you the patterning for the
Yeah.
game. And I feel like it did a really good job of establishing like mood and tone.
Yes.
That like we are collaboratively storytelling. So
Yeah.
we're literally going to
Yeah.
sit in a round and have this communal moment where we all learn the game together and then have
Yeah.
the game together.
No one's in charge.
Exactly.
I think it's so key, and because
Good
I've seen
point.
it not done this way every single time. I mean, it's done that way when I do it because I think
'Cause you
that
do it right.
that I
He's
do.
only played it like 40 times.
I mean, it is mimicking what we're going to do for the rest of the session.
Yeah.
And like you guys say, it's already like setting that tone of we're doing this
Yeah.
collaboratively. But I mean, that does it, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen one or two people like where they're like reading the instructions for the group. Definitely, I recommend away from that.
Yeah.
Like you're already starting, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
the very first card says exactly that. It says, I'm going to read it here. Go around the table
Yeah.
clockwise, taking turns reading these cards aloud.
Right.
So it is immediately telling you exactly what to do.
And what I love is, like, you get, there's like 15, 16 of those. By the time you're done reading those, everyone's in this mode of, like, flip a card, read it, ask a question, or move on. Like, yeah, okay. By the time you pull your first queen, for the queen card, you've done a bunch of questions already.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it just feels like you've broken the ice, you have momentum, you're asking, what's next.
Absolutely.
No, it's awesome. So that takes you through the basics.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to, because our
Yeah.
game of, you guys played a game of For the Queen more recently than our game was.
Oh, right.
Is those also set up your characters?
So your character in this game is not set up like at all, right?
I came in with a character sheet. They were like, no.
Nope.
Yeah.
You are an amorphous being of light.
Correct. That's about all you have starting this game. So, I mean, what it does is it repeats that thing that we did in the beginning of this session, which
Yep.
is the background story. And the background story is very basic, right? And it works for any of these different scenarios,
Yeah.
right? There's a queen, there's a perilous journey, there's a distant power. You think you're brokering an alliance. That might be the case. That might not, right? So that kind of opens it up to work for almost any story or any setting, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever, right? And then suddenly it says, she chose you, and it's only us that are on this journey. That's really important, right? There aren't any other NPCs. There's nobody else we have to worry about. It is us here at the table and the queen, and that's it. And nobody's playing the queen, right? We're just talking about our relationship to it. Very important, right?
Absolutely.
I just had a wild non sequitur idea. Well, except it's about For the Queen. So not entirely non sequitur. Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas is a queen because she's married to the Pumpkin King.
Yeah.
That's going to be my next For the Queen.
No, that's super awesome.
100%. And I think
like it.
that's one great thing is you've played this game a couple of times. If you have an idea of what you want to do, you could just start answering questions and going there, but you can also set a tone at the table.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You could just be
we're
like,
going to be ants.
we're going to be ants,
Yeah.
and whatever.
We're all the feelings, and the queen is our little girl. Now we're playing Inside Out.
Yes.
So there,
Yeah.
we can
That's
all play
so
a Disney
good.
movie.
Yeah.
100%. I mean,
So
another
good.
one
He's
that
like, I already played that fucking guy.
I have not played that game yet. I have thought about like we are all different facets of the queen, so that's
Yeah.
definitely of that zone, and I haven't
I
played
love
it. But another one is like the queen is like a witch queen, and we're her familiars, right, or
Yeah.
something like that. Like that
Yeah.
would be awesome,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But like, yeah, you can go kind of like
It's
lots
very
of
good.
places
You can
with
go
this
buck
game.
wild on this,
Yeah.
and it's so good.
But I guess, I mean, the next thing these cards do, the instruction cards, they just tell you, about how long the game's going to take.
Yep.
They tell you you're going to take turns picking up these prompt cards and answering questions, and they kind of tell you how that works. But they also tell you about the X card, how it works in this
Yes.
game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, go for it. It basically, you can, in addition to that traditional use of the X card that we talked about, you can decide as you're going around the table if you don't want that card. So you can X a card choice. So you can just decide, I like what we're doing here. This card doesn't really fit what I'm thinking of. I'm going to X that card.
So I just played this with a whole bunch of kids at Orcon.
Yeah.
And, like half of them had decided, well, one or two of them had decided that they love the queen and they're going to do anything they can for her. And the other kids, of course, decided immediately the queen's evil
Yes.
and they're going to destroy her,
Like,
right?
nothing
before we
wrong
even
with this
started the
game.
game, right?
This
That's
is
just how it works.
Yep.
And so one of the kids picks up a question and it's like, what makes the queen beautiful? And he was like, nope. And he just X'd that card out, grabbed the next card.
Instinct.
Instincts, right?
That's so good.
And so, and that's how the game can be played. It's how the game is meant to be played. This X is not like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with
Yeah.
this. That's not the only reason you use it. You can use it for tone. You can use it just because maybe that card doesn't make sense to you. Sometimes there's a card which is like, oh, you set up an ambush for the queen. Why did you do it? That's come up before as like the first or second card. We don't even know what's going on
Yeah.
yet. And some people are like, I think it's too early for this. I'm going to X this out
Yeah.
and let's keep going,
Nice.
right? Because it just doesn't make sense yet.
And that wasn't, to me, it was an interesting mechanic because I think we are more conditioned to, especially when there's randomizers involved, whether it's cards or whether it's, rolling character for Traveler or dice or whatever, to just accept the randomizer.
Yeah.
So it was really cool because in the game that we played, Jean multiple times said, and then you get that person at the table where you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I don't have to if I'm kind of stumbling or like this doesn't fit what's going on in the narrative in my head right now. I don't have to go with it.
Sweet.
So it's very cool.
And I highly recommend that for those people who, end up getting this game and they're playing it. Lead by example. Like I've done that before where it was a space themed thing and I put this thing in there which was a little bit dark, but I was like, I was kind of cool with it. And then I was like, I'm feeling a little bit squeaky about it. Not even the other players at the table. I was feeling a little bit weird about the thing I introduced. And I'm like, I'm going to change that to something a little less weird because I wasn't that into it. And then I just felt more comfortable with the game, right?
Sweet. Absolutely.
So like set that by example.
Yeah.
Just show them and remind people like, sometimes they'll pick it up and you can just see on their face, like, okay, I'm not sure. You don't have to tell them to exit, but just go like, hey, you have that option.
Yeah,
you can exit that
pass
card.
it.
Yep.
And another rule in this game, which the introduction cards tell you, and Jason's reminding us here, is you can pass cards.
Yes.
So I pick up that question and I'm like, I'm going to pass this over to the next person and say, I'd like to see you answer this question.
Which often can honestly be the most like flower petal beautiful FU to the person next to you.
Yes.
In like the just the most delightful way of like,
for
actually, you can answer this one.
Well, like you could have set your character up to be this, like, I would lay down my life for the queen and I would do this, and then you get a card that's like,
what did she do to hurt you? Why won't you forgive her?
Yeah, right?
Exactly. And you're like, you tell me this aspect of that. I am completely, because it doesn't mean you're not completely loyal and that you wouldn't lay your life down for the queen or whatever, but we are nuanced.
And once again, if you are like, no, I am lawful good.
Yeah.
X the card.
Yeah.
And I remember this vaguely. I may have been drinking adult beverages when we were playing our game at the con.
Like apple juice.
Yeah, just so many
cider.
ciders.
Yeah.
You can line item veto on an X card, right? So if you're like, I like part of this, but I may be trying to like hold something back from the group, I'm going to answer the first half. So it's like, why did you set up the ambush? And if you or you set up an ambush, you might not want to answer the why part yet. So you can just be like, I set up the ambush, and like just give half of that information. Like this is very improv-y, obviously, that like you can give partial gifts and you're doing this like establishing of a group reality. So sometimes that requires that like, you don't necessarily give everything away up front where you like walk in the scene like,
yes,
I hate the queen. You're like, okay, that's a lot. Bring it back. Hold something back. So like the X card can be like dramatically appropriate too and not just like personal boundaries.
Yeah.
Oh no, I totally agree, and I that was something. So like, if we talk about the third or fourth, this is basically the scarlet. I keep calling it scarlet because it looks like that, or it's crimson.
I don't know what.
Yeah, no,
chartreuse.
it's beautiful.
I don't know what colors are.
These are the cards that you are going through as you go around the table that people are selecting or deselecting or Xing or to answer questions about your journey and the queen and different things that are going on in the story. So the other thing that I think is super cool about the game that you read in the rule prompts is, in addition to you like, okay, I get this card, I'm gonna accept this card and I'm gonna do it. What did you bring with you to protect the queen? So in addition to me accepting that I can read this and I'm going to answer this question, people can ask me questions.
Yeah.
So at the table, that can go on for 0 questions to however many the table wants it to kind of flesh out. Because if I say, oh, I brought an elixir,
it's like, cool. Do we know you have that elixir?
Yeah.
Right.
Wait,
What does
are
that
you an
elixir do?
alchemist? Wait, what are you? Yeah.
And to me, those clarifying questions are the meat of the game.
Right?
It really is.
Like, okay, I mean, these
Totally agree.
crafted questions in the cards are fucking brilliant.
Yep.
But the conversation that they spawn, 1, is the magic of the card, but 2 is the, like, 80% of the game.
Absolutely.
I totally agree.
Because you could just flip through these and answer questions real fast. Like, okay, we answered a bunch of questions. Bye, everybody.
Yep.
Like, no, but the story that spawns out of that just unfolds, just naturally is
Yeah.
really, really
I
exciting.
think so too, because it's like you get excited about, because it's not your, it's once again, it's not it. We're not a monolith. It's a bunch of people at the table coming up, and it's like, holy shit, I never thought of that. That is so
So-
cool. What does that mean?
I'm going to read this
Yeah.
instruction card. This
Yeah.
is one of the cards that is specifically about what you guys are talking about, which is, after you've drawn this card and you've answered the question, other players may ask you questions or make suggestions on your turn. But whether you answer those questions or include those suggestions is entirely up to you.
Yep.
So, yes, you grab that question. You
Yeah.
say, yep, I'm carrying an elixir, right?
Yeah.
And now we're asking all those clarifying questions.
Yeah.
Maybe we're like, ooh, what about this? Or like, oh, I have this question. Whether you answer those, again, like you can even X those questions. And I would even say there's a difference between saying, I prefer not to answer that question,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Xing the actual
Yeah.
question,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Or the difference of, I prefer not to answer that question, to, I prefer not to answer that question.
Yeah, right? You're just like, no!
Yes.
No,
And
that's.
sorry.
Oh no, go for it.
I just want to say, I think I really like the clarifying question idea because this isn't mechanically a part of the game that has to happen. Like, you answer a question and we all have to ask you a thing. Like, it takes the pressure off of, like, what if I can't think of a good one? Like, what color's the elixir? Shit, I don't have a good question. So it makes you
So
even
true.
more excited when you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I have this, like, amazing, like, A to, like, improv thing, like A to B, A to C question of, like, how long did you know that, like, the queen was immune to elixir? I don't know. Something
Yeah.
cleverer than I thought of just right now. So, like, there were these really good moments in our game where, like, a buck wild question would come out and you're just like, oh, you've changed everything by asking this perfect thing that was prompted
Exactly.
off of your question.
Well, and I think that's the other thing that's super cool about this is, like you said, that just the right question can totally also turn the game into a different directions and different nuances. And Bria, you pretty much said this before, but the fact that I just totally lost my thought.
Well,
I took the
happens.
pretty
Then
card.
I'll take it for a second,
Yeah,
and then
please
when
do.
you're ready, leading questions. Holy shit, right?
Oh my
like,
God.
like
Yeah.
if you've got leading questions, like that
Yes.
immediately changes that whole
Yep.
tone. You start establishing relationship questions too.
Yep.
Like sometimes people read that question, and it's like, oh, I have
Yeah.
an elixir, and now we're asking you questions about you and that elixir. But you could very easily later in the game be like, how come you didn't tell me that you were bringing this elixir on the journey, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a leading question, right? I
Yeah.
just said that you haven't told me, and now I'm asking you why you haven't, and I'm establishing all sorts of weird relationship details between you and me that have
Yes.
nothing to do with the queen necessarily, right?
Yep.
And I think when I first played this game, like we were kind of looking at the questions and answering those and asking clarifying questions about them, which meant everything was very queen focused.
Right.
But I played with a few friends who were like, we want to establish a little bit more relationships
Yeah.
between us.
Yes.
And we ended up kind of like hacking the game and testing that, but you don't need to. I found
Right.
like asking these questions on your own is
Yeah.
kind of how you do it.
Well,
But-
and once again, just that one or two people cueing the others by doing that.
Yes.
And then the thing I was thinking of that you were saying earlier, Brea, is that, and well, you did too, Jason, is that you're telling a narrative game and you're collaborating, so you're coming up with all these cool things, and it's like, oh, I have an elixir, and I got it from the priestess of the something, but you can also, by leaving things out or leaving them kind of vague, leave room for other people to fill in or
Yes.
decide that they want to direct that somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or make it, like you said, when you were like, I don't want to answer that.
Yeah.
It takes on a different tone.
Absolutely.
So I like the fact that it's like it doesn't need to be 5 minutes of, this is how I made this elixir and it has these components and it's because my father was a something and, my mother was an herbalist.
And I have played with
da-da-da.
someone who
Yeah.
is going on a little bit like that once. And it's up to your table how you're going to deal with that, or if you're going to deal with that, or if that's just enjoyable to you. It could be
Yeah.
everybody wants to sit there and talk for 5 minutes at a time. That's
Yeah.
fine too.
Yeah.
But I agree with you.
Yes.
Like leaving those white spaces is great. Like here's a blank
Yep.
space.
Yeah.
Why don't you come and fill it for me?
And
right?
sometimes you're doing that for yourself, but then the chance is that somebody else could fill that in and you're like, oh shit, okay.
Didn't think of that one.
Yeah.
But I like what you were saying with
Yeah.
the, like, sometimes you want to establish more relationship, interpersonal things. Like,
Yeah.
that's all about, like, individual player priority. And this is a game that, because it doesn't constrain you, some players at the table are like, what the fuck is the queen's deal? And all of my, like, follow-up questions will be about the queen. And some people are like, No, but like I feel like I'm in love with Gina's character, so I'm gonna do that. You guys figure out the plot is. Sup, girl? Like, so like
Absolutely.
you actually build
I'll
this
be
like
making
fleshed
out
out
over
world.
here in this corner.
Yeah,
So.
like so. Why don't you love me?
Sure,
Like,
I love the queen.
we're
That's
gonna do
why-
this
yeah.
game now.
Yeah, and the game works like that. Like,
Yeah.
it works like however
Don't
you
turn me
wanna play
down.
it.
Must
Yeah.
be loud.
I turned me down.
Ah, dang it.
I was going to say, like we're talking about different types of players and different playing styles.
Yeah.
And again, one of the great things about this game is that it's so open-ended as far as that goes. You'll go into a lot of role-playing games and a lot of different types of story, even story games that sometimes feel like there's a lower barrier to entry, and sometimes there is. But this one just has like the lowest barrier to get in.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to create characters. You don't even need to know what characters are, right? All you need
Yep.
to do is have a couple of people who want to sit down and tell a story together
Yep.
and read and answer questions. And I guarantee you, I've played this with a lot of people who've never played a role-playing game ever in their life. And everyone just gets it. It's
Well,
just that
yeah,
easy,
can you
right?
talk about that for a second? Like about accessibility in two different ways. One is like the thing you did at Orcon,
Yeah.
that you have a friend who also did at PAX South,
Yeah.
right? And then also about making the game more accessible for folks.
Yeah.
Also.
So my friend Andy Kerrison, she's one of the big volunteers over at PAX Unplugged, and I say volunteer, but I think she's got like a paid gig there to help with some of the some of the RPG type content. And she saw that they were doing this thing at PAX Unplugged where it's called Learn and Play. They would teach you a little bit of this board game, and then they would have you play it, right? And we do a similar thing, like we have the 101s at Strategicon. Cons do this. But she was like, we're going to do this for story games. We're going to make a Learn and Play for the Queen. And so that's what she did, and she set up a session, and I think she got something like 70-odd people there
Yeah.
playing
Like
on
really
a
weird.
ton of tables. Yeah, I mean, it was huge, right? And fortunately, again, Sean Nittner and Evil Hat, thank you guys so much for like supporting all this. Like, they sent her a whole
Good
bunch of
job.
decks, and she in turn sent me those decks. That's why we had them for Archon.
Nice.
And so I was just kind of emulating what she had done. And there's a little bit of concern, like maybe 10 people will show up, or a dozen, or who knows what. And we ended up with like this 30-odd people, ready to play this
Yeah.
game. And there was a few who had played like once or twice, or like Gene many times. but those people who had played many times, I just was like, oh, hey, you're going to help me facilitate this. And we talked about it very loosely in the beginning, not even to this depth at all, right? And we could have read the instructions and showed them how it works and done an example. But because it's so simple,
Yeah.
it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of how it works, and now I'm just going to let these facilitators like play with you guys. And so they went to these different tables and just ran
Nice.
games, right? And you were there, so
I
like,
had a great time.
yeah. As far as other accessibility things, like, I mean, one, like this is just like I've run this online before, so it's a nice game where you don't need to. There aren't too many tools that are kind of involved, as you see. I mean, just these
Yeah.
simple decks of cards and questions. So I just see it as like a lot easier for anybody to really have
Yep.
and be
Yeah.
able to access.
Yep.
They're not just providing the cards as a physical set. They actually have it in the Roll20 marketplace. So Evil Hat has it out there, so you can
Yeah.
go into Roll20 and just be like, I'm purchasing this deck for a couple bucks or however much it is,
Yep.
and now I can run this game, right? And it's got
Yeah.
the deck set up like this, right? The cards will come out with the same kind of background
Yeah.
and art and all that stuff,
That's
right?
so good.
So, I mean, there's an online way to play, right?
I
what-
just think
yeah.
think that's really cool that a lot more games are doing that now, where it's not only accessibility for just you don't have to roll dice if you aren't able to roll dice or but it's also a purchase point.
Yeah.
Where it's like I can't afford this, but I can buy this game for a couple bucks and play it online with
Right.
friends. That's super cool.
What I am pushing for, and I know they've heard this, but I'm happy for more people to tell them this,
Yeah.
is like, we want the app version, so I could just be like, play for the queen, read the
Yeah.
questions, next, pass
Yes.
this around.
Chums knows I talked to Sean about that,
Yeah.
and he's all
Yeah.
They want to get this done first,
Right.
but they are definitely because you're so right. It's like this is a game you could play. I'm standing on queue, with friends of mine, and we could play this online.
Absolutely.
and just being able to have it in my pocket everywhere I go is kind of like an awesome idea.
Yeah.
I do want that a lot.
Play it in the car.
I mean, I guess you could do like
somebody
a
that just
you could do like a
Road trip.
photo album in your pictures, and like at least until they develop the app, and then
Yeah.
How do you shuffle the photos?
Yeah, that's a little hard.
yeah.
You can figure it out. Figure it out! Yeah, that's what we have, a tech person.
Cool.
I think that's really
But
cool.
I
will-
really like your phrase. Sorry.
No, go. No,
I really like your phrase that there's a low floor of entry, but I think it's a low floor, high ceiling, because you can play like the mild version of this game. It's like read the cards and you've built like a
Yeah.
normal version of the game and everyone did it. But the high ceiling is like when you stunt on this game and ask interesting questions and like do your best to like find the game that you guys are playing and play the fuck out of it. Like this game is buck wild. It's so good. So like I would say Fiasco is like a medium floor, pretty high ceiling, but like there is that we all have to know the like movie tropes that we're doing and we have to hit those tropes really well. So it's like
Right.
harder to like
Yeah.
break in and have a good game of Fiasco. This like, can you read? Do you have imagined
Yeah.
thoughts in your brain? Congratulations. Play this game. You're doing it.
can
I'm
do
like,
this.
Yeah.
I love how succinctly that's summarized. Perfect.
Imagine thoughts.
I mean, I will say, like I'm saying, how easy it is for newbies, right, who haven't played this kind of stuff. But Abria, you're like 100% on it. Is like I've played this game with like the most hardcore of like RPG story game people, and it's been fantastic, right? And so even though I will warn you about the timing, like it does say in the instructions, like put the card, the end card in the middle of the deck, and it's 30 minutes, or put it later, and
That's
it's
a
like
lie.
an
It's
hour
okay.
or
Yeah.
more. I played it with some friends online on the Gauntlet a while ago, and we put it in the middle of the deck, and it took us 3.5 hours to get through that game because there was just so much of like we're asking each other questions, and
Yeah.
we're like really developing this world and story, and it was super intense, right? So you can play it, at just like those kind of different levels and enjoy it at those different levels, right?
Like, if you're
Yeah.
having a hard, like, if you need like a hard exit time for the game, remove the end card, put it on the side,
And then-
set a timer. Like, oh, okay, we're out of time.
Good point.
Now ask the last question.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
absolutely tailor this to be like, we only have 40 minutes.
And to that end, I mean, there are ways to hack like the way the game flows. So I did exactly that when we had. I knew we were probably going to run over. We had like a 2-hour game. It was an online game. I knew the people I was playing with would be a bit verbose. And so what I did is instead of just like putting the card way down there, I think I did put it there, but I was like, you know what? I'm setting an alarm. When that alarm goes off, that next question is for the queen. I kind of randomized it a little bit so people couldn't know exactly when it went off, because that's part of the fun of throwing it in the deck
absolutely.
is like that uncertainty. But like I would hear the alarm, and then it was like, okay, and that was good because we were like not even close to where we needed to be. So you can
That's so
totally play
good.
the game timed in some sense,
Yeah.
right? But I think, maybe adding a little bit of that random element is
Yep.
like a good call.
yeah.
I think so too.
I do want to say something about kind of the active listening part, because I think one thing this game does is, it looks like a story game and it's fun, but it's masquerading, like it's a story game that's masquerading as just like, it's amazing GM and player and table culture training
Yes.
masquerading as a game, right?
Yes.
Like it's
Yeah.
pretending to be this cute game, but really
Yeah.
what it's doing is teaching you to pay attention, teaching you to listen, teaching you to ask interesting questions. Like one of the observations that I heard this weekend was it felt like the active player was the player and everyone else was the GM.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what that's what it is
Yeah.
constantly, right? You're just kind of like shifting that player and GM role around the table constantly. You never have any downtime as a player.
Yes.
In a lot of traditional RPGs, you can sit there when it's not your turn, look at your phone, do whatever, and actually, like, it's
Yeah.
sort of fun.
Yep.
Which
Yeah.
isn't, like, I don't like to play that way, but
Yeah.
people do it, and let's say, like, in a D&D long combat thing, not shading D&D, but, like, it could take a while to get
The
back
game
to your
allows
turn.
it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to 100% be engaged with every little thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And with this, you're not only encouraged to, you're rewarded for
Yeah.
being
Yes.
engaged.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and hearing,
Yes.
like, the question that Abria asks Gina about Gina's card sparks something that I want to ask or just think about, and
Yeah.
you're just constantly rewarded for being engaged.
Yep.
And honestly, like, after a game of this, I feel like, kind of the emotional carriage of watching a really good TV show or something where you just like, wow, okay, I need to catch my breath because I feel like we've just been galloping through this amazing storytelling adventure, and it's wild.
And the best part is like, you're like we're constantly doing it, but it's not at a breakneck pace.
Right.
Like you don't feel like you feel like there's the little like the quieter parts and the interesting introspective questions.
Yep.
And
it's truly like a team concept. It's truly collaborative. So we can do a lot of collaborative storytelling, but we have the end game of our own characters in our head and what we're trying to kind of build towards, and we the influx of that into the fiction. And so it's not like other games aren't grabbing spotlight or hogging necessarily, but there is so much more of a balance, I think. And even if the story or the narrative shifts towards another character or something, it is so shared that it just it's also just like polite people behaviors. you know, it's like
absolutely.
I'm listening to what you're contributing, and I'm actually active listening, which is I think what you said. So it's not just listening; it's active listening and then responding to that, which is really cool.
I think to that training element, right? Like active listening, the X card, we talked about that safety, and like I've again, I hear this over and over again in these games. Somebody's like, I've played in games with the X card, I've never activated it, and here you will invariably activate it, not even because of this is troubling content, but just becomes normalized because you're just using it for other reasons to remove a card.
Well, and what I love about that is if I do need to remove troubling content that I don't want to have to explain to anyone, whatever, we've used the X card 1 billion times, and if I just go, actually, can we X that? Like, it's now not the one time out of 16 hours of gameplay that somebody touches the X card, which now, because in that situation, like, everybody knows I'm announcing my trauma, and I don't want to do that. I want to be able to have some amount of, like, deniability or just not have to talk with
casualness or something where it's
like it normalizes it because it's frequent.
Exactly. So normalizing it, using it in like the sort of casual sense, like you said, also makes it, I feel, safer to use in the actual like emergency moment of like.
And I definitely had that moment, like, in our game, because it was my first game at the con, and someone, like, X'd a thing out, and my brain was like, oh, that's on the board. Oh! And you're just like, I'm a dummy. Got it. I'm going to use, fuck. Cool.
Right.
Yeah, it feels like ringing a bell.
Yep, exactly.
GM training, right?
Yes.
Like, I think if you play this game a couple of times, and really kind of understand what's going on, you kind of inadvertently you're being taught to ask questions and leading questions of the player, right? And so again, that observation of we're all GMs and there's a player here and we're kind of taking turns all being GMs with a player, like it is kind of like GM training, training in the sense of how do we create a collaborative story? Like some games, that's maybe not as relevant, right? If this is a puzzle game, maybe I'm going through a puzzle, a dungeon crawl, where there isn't as much collaboration. Cool, you don't need that. But for a lot of people who want to have that kind of like collaborative type, scene framing or whatever, like this definitely like feeds into that, right? Another thing is you start with 0, right? You're sitting down and the very first thing you get before you know who you are or whatever is a question, and it says something, and you just have to answer it. I don't even know who I am yet, right? I don't know what gender I am. I don't know if I'm a human or not, right? I don't know anything.
You don't have character sheets holding you back.
As someone once said. So, I mean, this is another observation, and I'd be interested here if you guys didn't see this yourself, but like at the end of the game, 99% of the time, more than 99% of the time, you have no name.
Oh, I did not have a name, and I was stressed the fuck out about it. And I was like, hey, my character thought this and said this.
I do find that a lot of times people will start giving you role-based names, like, oh, the alchemist over there, like, because you said you had a potion, so I'm just saying that, right? And the hunter, the, whatever it is. That comes up a lot.
But honestly, like in one of the most memorable times I played this, 3/4 of the way through the game, we realized all of us were clones of the queen, and that couldn't have
Really?
happened if we planned it.
Yeah.
right? But like some things that people had said,
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
why this and how about this, and like when did you know that you're her clone? Like. But that was not a non sequitur question. Like it
Yeah.
made very much sense in the context, and that
That's
kind of
cool.
reveal is only possible because we didn't have all these preset notions of what roles we're playing or what characters we are, or that sort of thing, and that was just wild.
Nice.
Yep.
That's super cool.
Yeah. I mean, what else? Do you guys have anything else to say about it? Like, I think that's all, for me, that's like some of the main draws.
Well, definitely want to talk about where you can get it, right?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Before we do that, I just have one more thought.
and there's a couple
and
other
then,
things,
and
but
then
go for it.
some
Yeah.
other options.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mr.
Personal
Mr.
context.
B.
Yeah, my personal context going into this is someone
Yeah.
that like writes and does a bunch of improv. I think the coolest thing I noticed from the game I played in was that we were like, everyone has watched a bunch of movies and TV shows, so you have this like latent and passive sense of like act breaks and heightening that we were doing on our own. And like this was the idea with the cadence mapping, that we would have like these long like establishing shots of like what the world is like and like what we're kind of like and like how we're doing, and then there would be like this little like nugget and everyone would dogpile on it, and you would get like 13 questions off of one person's card that built to like
Cool.
an act break like revelation, and then everyone knew to like back off because we couldn't maintain that pace,
Yeah.
and then looked at something else and built that slowly and built to another
Yeah.
act reveal. And I think that was the coolest thing I like went home ranting about, was like, we did like a good movie, we did a good pilot, I'm proud of this. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a
That's
fun
cool.
thing to explore, like not just how to tell a story, but like the way we have like learned to tell stories. It's not like a book story, it's closer to TV and film. So it's kind of fun from like a meta
That's
stance
really
to
interesting.
see the
Yeah, that
like
is.
the meta framing of how we
Yeah.
tell these stories. So it was pretty cool, and I enjoyed seeing that.
No, that is
Good
very
job,
cool.
guys.
See, now I want to look for that.
Yeah.
No, that's fascinating.
I mean, also that this excited like song and dance, like when
Yeah.
and we've all done this when we've gotten to the end of a game and we're like, oh my god, and then blah 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 blah, and you start like rambling about it. You can't help it. Like there's so much, like you're just pumped about the story that came out. You're reliving it, right? That happened the first time I played this with my partner Jay. Like we played a couple of games, the Quiet Year once, and this and that, and she was like, I'm not sure that RPGs are really the thing for me, right? But we played this game, and then she was like, yeah, that was cool, and then she was like, but yeah, and then this, and she did that exact like
Yeah.
that level of excitement, and I've seen that a couple of times with people, and it's kind of like reinvigorated the search for other games that maybe fit
Yeah.
that bill.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be, I think anybody can enjoy it. There's going to be a subset of
Yeah.
people who really enjoy this style of game more than maybe some more structured games.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about it is how unstructured it is, right?
Yep.
Cool.
and how many different types of stories you can tell,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that you could just with different groups of friends, if you have some time.
So speaking of that,
Yeah.
then let's dive into advanced mode.
Yeah.
I call it advanced mode, but only because I've played it so many times and whatever. There's nothing advanced about this. And actually, what I'm really
You're like a
interested-
beautiful mind with For the Queen, and you see patterns
Watching the
everywhere.
pigeons.
You're just like, oh,
all the little queens running around.
Yeah.
Um,
The red string and the
well, and this is the funny thing is like I like there's a part of me that would love to like float around and watch people as this game gets released, watch all the weird and different ways people play it. Because even
Yes.
this weekend, I went to one of the tables that was playing in that like big game, and they were doing something I'd never seen before, right? And that was Candace running that table, and Morgan Ellis was there.
Yeah.
And what they did is they put all the queen cards in a circle in the middle of the table, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And they were playing the game already, and I'm like, oh, all the queens are out. That's weird. And so as they were playing, they removed cards one by one. They're like, that's not my queen. Nope, that's not our queen.
Oh, I
and
love
so
this.
they started to just like narrow down the
Yeah.
field, and they finally ended up with one queen card. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. And then Morgan got the question, which was, this is not your queen. Why do you still serve her? And then he went in the deck and pulled out a different card. And he's like, that's my queen.
Oh my
And so
God!
it was just
That's
like,
super cute.
wow,
That's
like
really cool.
I never even thought of something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so there's
Yeah.
just a lot of different ways to play this thing. Again, it said 3 to 6 players, but we were at Big Bad Con last year, and there was a lot of adult drinks being drunk.
So many ciders.
And then there was also just like the lobby buzz. Like after the games, it's past midnight. It's like
Yeah.
1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah, that's the best time to
People
play
are
this
still
game.
all
What
over
are
the
you talking
place.
about?
And Kurt Potts,
Ha
he's
K-Potts.
turning. We're chatting, and he's like, "Wouldn't that be funny if for the queen it was like a queen bee?" And I was like, "Huh?" And like you're hearing the buzz in the background and all the chatter from different groups.
Yep.
And I just like rallied the troops, and we had about a dozen of us in a circle there, and we started out with that group, and we just started playing. And the only thing I said is I set that premise of we are following our queen bee, right? Now, whether or not you act like a bee or not or whatever,
Yeah.
that's up to you, right? But like we just started playing
That's
that
so
game.
cute.
People would go in and out. Like we had some people were like, "Whoa, it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm tired. I'm out of here." Cool. We would just use that as like, "Oh, we lost that bee because blah 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 blah."
Yeah,
right.
that's very good.
And then people would come in and be like, "What are you doing?" Join us. Just jump in the circle, and they get it within like a couple seconds. They know what's going on, right? And so it was kind of just this fantastic experience. And that was the first time I played it as like a true party game, meaning
Yeah.
like big
Yeah.
table, whatever. The next night, there was a dance club thing down there,
Yep.
and that closed at whatever hour in the morning.
Yeah.
And then everyone went up to the lobby, and we had like 20 odd people that had just finished like getting all this energy out. They're just like,
Yeah.
haha, talk. I'm like, if you guys want, we could play this game. And we played for the Dancing Queen. And we had a dance crew. We were following the queen to go broker an alliance with a distant power.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was a fantastic game. And
Yeah,
again,
can you even? Paris is burning.
20
like-
odd people.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh.
Right?
god.
I know.
Ballroom?
So there's the big form factor.
I want to play all over.
All the variants. Make
so
all the
good.
variants.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We're just gonna
Yeah.
close this off and play the game now.
Yep.
Right,
You
exactly.
can stay and watch if you want, but we're playing this.
I should have factored that in. I would totally do that. I've played a 2-player game before. That's actually really interesting in a different way because, like, you think like, okay, well, it's 2 players.
Yeah.
How different can it be? But remember, like, if you're answering the question, if I'm asking you clarifying questions, as soon as I'm done, I just pick up the next question. Like the pace is different.
Yeah.
Like I'm not waiting for other people to see if anybody has questions.
Yeah.
Like I'm asking you a question like, well, what about this? What about that? What about that elixir?
Was it
okay,
intense?
cool. Read.
It
and
feels
go.
like it would be
Yeah.
super
And it was
fucking
it,
intense.
it was kind of a little bit,
Like
yeah.
almost
Yeah.
not adversarial, but like that you would be.
Yeah.
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 And so like you have a lot more control in the 2-player over like
I don't know if I would
How
want to
that
play
relationship
2-player with a stranger. That just it
Yeah.
just seems like really raw and
Yeah.
I can see that.
vulnerable.
Sure. And that one was also like we had an urban setting which we hadn't had before, right? I think
Nice.
the person I was playing with, Asher, they had brought a book of Magic the Gathering art.
Oh, cool.
And so we were looking through it, and we're like, "Oh, that looks like a cool queen." And so we chose that one, and it's all steampunky and whatever. And we're like, "All right,
Nice.
the whole entire thing." Like most of the time, it's like space or fantasy wilderness.
Yeah.
But this journey was like purely through like an urban fantasy world, right?
that's
So we
so
were just in a big
good.
city the
Cool.
entire time,
Wow.
and it's just like those little things just make this game just sing anew,
Yeah.
right? So that was kind of cool.
That's cool.
We've already talked about how you can go like super in depth and like ask lots of interpersonal questions. Again, I think the game's got a lot of legs that way. But I think that's about. Oh, I will say one other thing. I've played this online in big form factor as well, and it kind of works.
Oh, I
so
heard
I think
about
the
that.
biggest was at Gauntlet Con. There was like we had about 8 or 9 people or something,
Ooh, yeah.
and it was just like a pre-con, like, hey, we're all hanging out in this chat room. Do you guys want to play this game? And we played like a big form of that, and we played
Yay.
Space Bees,
Yay!
which was fantastic.
Those are the best
I knew you
bees.
might kind of like
Yeah,
dig
yeah,
that.
Bees
yeah.
and space.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the best part is like you'll get cards like, the queen is not your queen. Why do you serve her? Well, okay, I'm not really a space bee. I'm kind of like this blob creature, and I just like pollinate this flower for her. And like, why can't you guys pollinate your own flowers? Like,
Yeah.
you just start
So cute.
going into like whatever. I will say one other thing. If you've played this game a few times, the first time you play, just play,
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah.
But what you realize that's going on here is you guys are on a journey. And the game does end. We barely even mentioned it. It ends when the card comes up, which says, the queen is under attack. Do you defend her? And we all have to answer
Yeah.
that question. And then the game's going to be over, right? So there's 2 things. In the first couple times I've played this game, that card comes up, the queen's under attack, and we all kind of answer it like, of course I defend her, or of course I don't, she's crazy and blah, blah, blah. Whatever. We answer the question, but it's very like simple yes or no almost. When I started playing it a couple of times, what I found is it works really in an interesting way when you kind of start developing the scene. Like, what does the attack look like? What is this attack, right? So a lot of times when I've been playing, we will start, like, the first person who gets that card will start to develop, like, I hear some people coming out of the bushes, but I'm a farmer, dude. I jump under that wagon and I'm done, and I'm closing my eyes and I just hope they don't see me. So that's my part. I've left some blank spaces for other people to take, but I've developed a little bit. And then, it goes to the next player, and they just develop it more. So as we go around the table, we actually turn it into like an actual role-playing scene.
Yeah, so you get like a full denouement instead of just, I didn't do
just
this
like,
thing,
yes,
but
no,
no one
yes,
knows
no,
what it
yes,
was.
no.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point.
So that's a cool one. And then from there, that next step is, I know, after playing this game a few times, I'm on a journey. And I know we're going to a distant land. And I know we're under the pretense of brokering an alliance. So play into it. When I get that question and it says, whatever, right? The queen sometimes shows interest in your life. How do you respond to that? Maybe I'll start by saying like, well, we just left the forest and we're by the stream and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'll start adding the scenery elements as we're doing this journey. And that way it starts to give this game a little bit of that, like, oh, it's like a role-playing game. Like, I'm actually starting here, and then we got here, and then we're starting to, like, move along.
Yeah,
right?
That's a very fair point.
And it gives other people at the table permission to do that, where they might not know that,
100%.
oh, I can just make shit up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So good.
So I think I've rambled about it sufficiently. If anybody else has something to say.
We should play the game.
Yeah, and queue up to pre-orders in March.
Yeah.
Hopefully?
So where can you get this game, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be produced and sent out, sold by Evil Hat Productions. So if you go to Evil Hat under their Our Products thing, it's there. It's got its own little web page and everything. I think they claim that it should be fully released and ready in like June, July timeframe this year, 2019. In March, however, so just a couple weeks from now, they should have a pre-order page set up.
Yeah.
So, and if you're on Twitter or something and you follow Evil Hat, you'll definitely see it there. They're pretty active on Twitter. But you can just check the webpage and
you can also sign up for, as you can with a lot of companies, but you can sign up to get newsletters. But you can specifically sign up for the Queen notifications and not get if you don't want too much stuff in your inbox. So you can get updates about that stuff too. Which is cool.
Yeah.
So it's a fun game.
Play it. So, like, reach out to us
and play it again
on social media and let us know how your games went, because this is a game where, like, you were telling I've been in plenty of RPGs where I'm like, please don't tell me about your D&D campaign, because I don't care. This is like the game where you're like, no, like, how did it go for you? What was your queen like? Oh shit,
story.
Space bees. Tell me more.
Tell me about your queen.
Yeah. I want to know the story, because the stories are just fascinating.
Exactly. So tell us your stories of playing for the Queen too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
So maybe we should end this with with a question, which is: the Queen is under attack.
Yeah.
Do we defend her?
I totally do. Yeah. I'm gonna defend her. Love the Queen.
I won't, because I've already backed her up to the external drive.
Nice.
Why would I, when I'm the one that like launched the cyber attack?
I've got one thing to say.
Yeah, space bees. Sweet.
Well, all right then. I will put up the calendar here. Thanks everyone for tuning
thank you
in.
guys.
I figured out how a computer mouse worked just now.
And join us again next month when we talk about something else.
Yeah. Do you know what the game we're going to talk about?
I've got ideas.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I definitely want to bring up here is the Skeletons. It's an older one. Oh,
I don't know.
yes. So let's
Spooky?
give a tease then.
Scary?
So
Yeah.
The Skeletons was written by Jason Morningstar, same one who did Fiasco and all that. It's an older game. It kind of flips the script on Dungeon Crawl, where you play the skeletons in the crypt.
That's so good.
Similar to this game, you
Nice.
start with no memories of anything, because you're just a skeleton, right? But then every time you're awoken, because as an intruder, you have to deal with it. And then you have little flashbacks about things of your past life. So again,
This is
as
very
time
cute.
goes on, Like you develop some more story.
That's a good
It's a
choice.
fascinating little game.
I like it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Well,
Cool.
thanks everybody
Well,
for
thanks,
tuning
bye.
in. We will see you next time.
Bye.